Yet beneath her awe stirred unease. This was no mere library, it was a sanctum, a hall of secrets. A fluttery warmth filled her chest as she wandered deeper into the library, her every step echoing faintly against the vast stone floor. It wasn't merely a library, it was a treasure trove. The shelves loomed like ancient battlements, overflowing with tomes. By one towering window stood a colossal brass orrery, its planetary arms whirling slowly as though powered by the very heartbeat of the universe. Beside it rested a grand telescope, polished to a shine that seemed out of place in the dust of ages, trained at some forgotten point in the heavens. Biting her lip, Melody gave in to the strange urge that stirred within her, an itch in her fingertips and a hunger in her mind. She wanted to wander every aisle, touch every spine, and restore order to the chaos. This wasn't entirely foreign to her. In college, she had worked part-time as a research assistant in the archives of the history department. Her job had been to wrestle with crumbling manuscripts, obscure categorization systems, and the occasional professor who swore his missing papers had vanished into thin air. She had learned then how to read the soul of a collection, the way themes clustered, how knowledge connected across centuries, how a story lived not in one book, but in the way dozens conversed with each other. The memory steadied her. She pulled a stray leather-bound volume from a teetering pile and inspected its cover. The ink was faded, the title etched in Latin. Chronica Umbrae, she murmured, tracing the letters, and then glanced up at the shelves around her. There was a pattern here, buried beneath centuries of neglect. Her process began instinctively. First, she mapped the room in her mind, sketching invisible quadrants. She whispered categories under her breath: histories, natural sciences, arcana, philosophies, forbidden works, as though naming them gave her control. She began stacking books on the floor in careful towers, scribbling shorthand notes into a pocket journal she'd retrieved from her bag. Next, she worked shelf by shelf, her fingertips brushing spines like a pianist, coaxing music from ivory keys. Books too fragile she cradled against her chest, carrying them to safer resting places. Those that felt charged with something, heat, static, an odd whisper when she opened them, she set apart entirely, unwilling to lump them into anything mundane. Hours blurred as her system took shape. Soon, one corner became a proper catalogue of histories, another a growing cluster of astronomy and natural sciences. The magical texts, however, unnerved her most. They hummed faintly when stacked together like bees in a hive. She couldn't help but wonder if separating them was wise or dangerous. Yet the thrill of creation fueled her. She wasn't just tidying, she was restoring something lost, dragging order out of centuries of beautiful ruin. And with each decision she made, each placement, each note scribbled, Melody felt a curious satisfaction, as though unseen eyes were watching her work, weighing her worth. And somewhere, hidden deep within the shelves, she felt him, the master of the house, distant, yet close enough that the hairs on her arms lifted whenever she paused too long. Her eyes roved across the library, searching the shadows, half expecting him to manifest from some unseen crevice like the phantom he seemed to be. Her fingers turned another brittle page, careless, distracted, and a sharp sting lanced through her hand. She hissed, shoving the bleeding finger into her mouth, a small cut, harmless. But the air changed. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, flickering to life as though they possessed wills of their own. The atmosphere grew heavy, suffocating, her heartbeat thrumming in her ears like a hunted thing sensing its predator. Then with a sudden snap, the lights extinguished. Darkness swallowed the library whole, thick, cloying, absolute. Melody's gasp echoed off unseen walls. She dropped the book in fright, the sound muffled against the stone floor. A rush of displaced air brushed past her cheek, and terror flooded her body in a choking wave. She didn't know this place well enough even in light, but now she was lost in a labyrinth of black. Something moved behind her. She screamed when a phantom touch skimmed her neck, stirring her hair as though lips had hovered there. Stumbling backward, Her spine slammed into a shelf, sending books raining down around her in a deafening cascade. But nothing struck her, nothing touched her, except the voice. Unnecessarily clumsy, I see. It was close, too close. She shrieked again, swinging wildly at the darkness, but a cold, iron-strong grip caught her wrist midair. The hand was unyielding, its chill unnatural. "You frightened me," she spat, struggling. What are you doing?" A soft chiding tisk. His presence moved in the dark like silk across skin, never seen but undeniably there. Melody's chest rose and fell in panicked gasps as her pulse hammered. "Afraid of the dark?" he taunted, his voice an elegant brogue, icy and ancient, impossible to place. He circled her, every syllable a brush at the edge of her ear. "Or is it that you fear being alone with me? Let me go." She jerked her wrist, but he did not yield. Instead, with unnerving grace, he raised her hand toward lips she could not see. Her breath hitched. Coolness enveloped her finger, the wounded one, as his mouth closed gently around it. His tongue swept across the cut, deliberate, tasting, savoring. The intimacy was unbearable, wrong, frightening, and yet somewhere in her belly, a shiver of something unnameable. She sputtered, her voice trembling. You can't." "Can't?" His chuckle was soft, dangerous. "I have waited centuries for one like you to speak to me so boldly. Tell me, Melody, are you denying me or daring me?" His teeth grazed the wound, just enough to sting, and her knees buckled. She pushed against him blindly but found only air. The grip was gone. The pressure of his presence vanished, and then, just as suddenly as it had failed, the lights blazed back to life. Melody stood in the center of the library, chest heaving, skin damp with cold sweat. The books she'd knocked loose were back in place as though they had never fallen. No trace of him, not even the echo of his mocking laugh. Her breath caught in her throat. Enough. She was leaving. She would pack her things and walk out tonight. But as she turned toward the door, her eyes snagged on one of the shelves. A single book protruded slightly as though waiting for her hand. Its spine was etched in faded gold script. Lyra. Eyeing the book with an unnerving stare, Melody bolted through the library doors, leaving them ajar as if the shadows themselves might spill out after her. She tore up the staircase, breath shallow, and flung herself into the bedroom. Her heart dropped. Her suitcase was empty. Flinging the closet door open, her blood ran cold. Every article of clothing she owned hung neatly inside, pressed, sorted, and displayed with surgical precision. Not a wrinkle out of place. When had this happened? What was happening? Shaking her head in mounting hysteria, Melody snatched her phone and laptop instead. Her clothes, her suitcase, everything else could rot here. Out into the hall, down the stairs, her chest pounded with wild hope when the heavy front door finally loomed before her. She seized the knob, twisted, then cried out as something sharp bit deep into her hand. "Ah!" she gasped, stumbling back. Blood welled and slid in rivulets down her palm. She ignored the sting, grabbed the handle with her other hand, and pulled with all her might. The door didn't budge, not even a rattle. Panic surged. She slammed her body into the wood, pounded until her knuckles throbbed. "Open! Open, damn it!" A soft throat cleared. Melody spun, chest heaving. At the foot of the stairs stood a middle-aged woman in a pristine vintage maid's uniform. Her smile was gentle, serene, too serene. "Master Reed has requested your presence for dinner," she said pleasantly, voice syrupy with cheer. "Please, allow me to escort you to your room to prepare for this evening's event." "Hell no!" Melody screamed, tears burning her eyes. "I'm leaving, do you hear me? I want to leave!" The maid's smile never faltered. Her hands rested politely in front of her apron, as if Melody's panic were no more troublesome than a child's tantrum. Finally, she stepped forward and laid her hands on Melody's trembling shoulders, her touch steady, grandmotherly, yet unyielding. "All is well, Miss Melody," she crooned. "Please do not anger the master. You'll only make this harder than it must be." The calmness, the maddening, terrifying calmness, made Melody's chest cave in. Sobs escaped her as she clawed at the door again, tried sprinting for the stairs, rattling every window she passed. None opened. Every latch sealed itself as if the house had a will of its own. Her strength broke. Rocking herself in the hall, she clutched her arms, shaking uncontrollably. Then, impossibly gentle yet disturbingly strong, the maid pulled her upright. Melody, numb and catatonic, barely resisted as she was guided back to the bedroom. Spread across the bed was a gown of deep emerald velvet, the kind of dress a noblewoman might have worn in a ballroom centuries ago. The bodice shimmered with embroidered gold thread. It looked wrong in this place, like a costume for someone else's life. "No," Melody whispered, shaking her head so hard her hair whipped across her face. "I'm not doing this. I'm not—" "Please wash up, Miss Melody," the maid interrupted kindly, "so that I may help prepare for tonight." The sweetness of her voice only made the terror worse. Melody stumbled into the bathroom and locked the door, her pulse racing. She spotted the tall window near the bathtub, a lifeline. Snatching up a chair, she hurled it with everything she had. The glass shuddered, cracked into spiderweb fractures, then, before her eyes, healed smooth again. "No, no, no, no!" she screamed, smashing the chair again and again until she collapsed, winded, sobbing on the edge of the tub. Her cries echoed back at her in the silence. Later, drained and trembling, she allowed the maid to dress her like a doll. The woman hummed faintly as she brushed Melody's hair, pinned it in an elegant style, smoothed the emerald gown over her shoulders. It felt like being prepared for sacrifice by someone too cheerful to notice the altar. And then she was led downstairs. The doors opened to reveal a ballroom bathed in golden light. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. The parquet floor gleamed like glass. Musicians played strings and piano, their haunting melody echoing beneath the high arches. Dozens of attendees stood in elegant formation. Every one of them was dressed head to toe in black, men in severe suits, women in gowns like shadow incarnate. Only Melody, swathed in green velvet, stood apart, her stomach twisted. She was on display. A waiter offered her a crystal flute of something red. Wine, she prayed, but its thickness, the way it clung to the glass, made her chest tighten. She shook her head. "No, thank you." The music screeched to a halt. Every head turned toward her in unison, observing, charting her every move as they all seemed to be waiting for something. The ballroom doors opened once more. A man eased into the warmth of the light which highlighted his person. A beautiful monster, one could guess. There was no mistaking who had just entered this gala. This was obviously the master of this awful place. Darkly handsome, draped in tailored black, his presence swallowed the room. His posture was regal, shoulders sharp, chin lifted and covered in a dusky stubble. His face bore the expression of a king who owed no one anything, haughty, aloof, carved in marble. But his eyes, cruel, piercing, searching, they moved deliberately over the bowed faces of the attendees. Every man and woman dipped low, reverent, as if his very glance was a weight they could not withstand. None dared to meet his gaze, none dared even to breathe loudly in his presence. Only Melody stood apart. Trying to shrink behind a marble pillar, she caught the maid's eye. The woman shook her head slowly, her smile fixed with that terrible, genuine warmth that was somehow more frightening than cruelty. It begged her not to act out, not to be childish in this moment, yet the plea only made Melody's panic flare hotter. And then she felt it, the weight of his stare. It pierced through the distance, through the crowd, pinning her like a moth on glass. Those eyes, alive, too alive, burned only for her. The crowd parted before him as if an unseen hand swept them aside. He did not hurry. He did not need to. Every step he took was obeyed by the silence of those who feared to displease him. When at last he stood before her, he bowed the faintest measure, dark grace incarnate. His voice, rich and commanding, slid through the hall. "May I have this dance, my lady?" It was not a question. No. Her voice was flat, her chin tilted defiantly, her pride mustering itself in the face of his oppressive presence. She wanted the word to cut, to insult. But his lips only curved faintly. He reached for her cheek with a reverence that was worse than scorn, his thumb grazing her skin as if memorizing every detail of her. Your defiance, he murmured, his tone silk over steel, is a symphony I could listen to for centuries. She jerked away from his touch with a sneer. Get your hands off me! And then she was in his arms. He swept her onto the dance floor with terrifying ease. The orchestra, which had been poised in still silence, struck up a waltz, grand, old, and haunting. A melody herself did not recognize, as if plucked from a century-long past. Her feet stumbled, but his did not falter. He placed her directly atop his polished shoes, his grip at her waist firm, unyielding. I will guide you, he said softly. She shivered. The crowd of black-clad figures surrounded them like a living void, swaying in time with the music, yet none moved closer. They blurred together, faceless shadows in contrast to her emerald green. In that sea of black, Melody realized with horror she was the only being alive. Her breath, her frantic heartbeat, her warm skin against his cold, these marked her out, and he reveled in it. You belong here, he whispered, turning her, guiding her body with the faintest pressure, until every step she made was only because he willed it, though you do not yet know it. I don't belong here, she snapped, voice breaking as he spun her, her green gown flaring against the tide of black. I want my laptop, my phone, my things. I want to leave. His low laugh curled against her ear, too intimate, too knowing. Such small mortal trinkets. What will your phone offer you when it cannot call for help in a place where no one dares to answer? What will your laptop hold for you? Hollow words, hollow pictures, when the truth is already here. Her breath hitched as he bent close, his lips grazing the air beside her temple. The truth, my sweet defiant one, is that you are mine to guide, mine to teach, mine to keep. Stop it, she spat, twisting against his hold, though he barely seemed to notice her struggles. I am not yours. I will never be yours. His eyes softened, not in mercy, but in a quiet, yearning hunger that unsettled her more than anger ever could. We shall see. The waltz swelled around them, her body moving as his commanded, her steps not her own. And though every part of her screamed to run, to flee, her mind trembled with the realization that he was weaving something far darker than captivity. He was weaving her into him.